is Selection Sunday today. We found out where Michigan and Michigan State landed in the bracket. And this is what I think about both teams and their outlook. So first of all, got to preface this thing with a bias that I have to the Michigan Wolverines. I put a future on Michigan not too long ago to win the tournament. Didn't get great value, but it was right after they lost to Duke. I felt like, you know what, this team battled with Duke. I think these two are a clear top two in the country. And I want to just ride Michigan, see what happens. I think that's a good way to go with this. And I got decent value. I think it was plus 380 when I got it. It's probably closer to like plus 340 right now. They did just suffer a tough loss today against Purdue. But with all the stats out there about who wins after winning their conference tournament, who does this, who does that, it's tough to make those picks and be confident in them. When you look at that bracket, anything can happen. But I like taking Michigan. I like taking Michigan because it separates you from other brackets. I think too many people out there are going to be taking Duke. If you want your bracket to be better than someone else's, you might need another champion. You might not want your margin to be on the 5-12 upsets, picking the right one in the first round. So a better place to go with that might be with switching up the champion and hoping Duke slips up against a team like Michigan, who already gave them a really good shot. That's what I'm thinking there. And I like Michigan in this bracket layout as well. I got it pulled up right here on my computer. And Michigan actually has a very interesting rollout in their region. There were a lot of teams I liked coming into this. There are a few lower seeded teams that play higher seeded teams really well. Now, I think Michigan easily takes care of that 16 seed. I think the Georgia-St. Louis matchup is really good for Michigan. While I think Georgia edges St. Louis just purely based off athleticism, and that leads to a Michigan-Georgia matchup. Either way, I've got Michigan against the spread for the 8-9 game. I think Dusty May has already proven when he was at FAU that he's a really good tournament coach, and I think he's about to prove that here at Michigan. Now, on that bottom part of the region, I do want to cover it really quickly because it does matter for how Michigan plays out the rest of that. And what I'm looking at is a Texas Tech team that might be slightly overseeded just due to the fact that they lost JT Toppin, who is top 10 player in the country, and I was really big on Texas Tech before he went down. I can't help myself. I want to pick Akron. I'm going to pick Akron. And then you move right below that. You got Alabama Hofstra. And Hofstra is a low-seeded team that has played high-ranked teams, top 100 teams in the net really well this season. I think Alabama has been up and down this year. I don't think Alabama's focus has been all there with the Bediako situation. I don't think this is the Alabama team that we saw a couple seasons ago. So why not? Give me extra upsets. I don't even think Michigan needs them to advance. I think they can take Tech and Alabama. I've got them in the Elite Eight with ease, and I'll hold off there. I would continue taking Michigan all the way, but I'll hold off there. I don't know who beats them besides Duke. I know they lost to Purdue today, but I don't know who beats them at the end besides Duke. And I also think they get some games to get comfortable in this tournament, and that's what you get as a 1 seed. We saw it last year with all the 1 seeds. It's another year where the 1 seeds have really separated themselves from the rest of the pack, and I think Michigan is another tier above even the 2 other 1 seeds not named Duke. Now, that does take us to a non-1 seed in Michigan State. It has been very impressive to me this season. Michigan State UConn, I think, bodes really well for the Spartans. I think this is a good enough draw of a 2 seed. The one team they've had trouble with is St. John's. Now, that is a defensive-minded team. UConn is a very winnable game for a Michigan State team that shows up. I've got Louisville here. So that's how Michigan State gets the step-by-step. I think North Dakota State is a reasonable matchup for them. This isn't an upset-prone team. They're going to lock in on the defensive end. In games where they should, Izzo's going to have his team taking care of the ball. They're going to do exactly that. They're going to move on against North Dakota State. The problem with that win after UConn is you run into Duke. And I just, even with how I just said I think Michigan can best Duke, I don't think you can pick Michigan State over Duke. So I have Michigan State's run ending at the Elite Eight. I have Michigan winning it all. Trying to get a little bit of variance while also being a little bit biased. I like U of M. I like MSU. I just don't like them all the way. I am super excited for this Detroit Tiger season. I think this Tiger season has a lot of potential. I'm not saying we're World Series favorites by any means, but I'm excited for the season. Next week, I'll worry about the season preview and what we got going on. Maybe we'll have a better idea of what the roster is going to look like. Know when guys are coming back from injury, a lot of pitching issues, and maybe a better idea of what that lineup's going to look like. Maybe Kevin McGonigle, which I'll talk about in a bit. But Kevin McGonigle, man, he is special. But I do want to talk about the World Baseball Classic and the Tarek Skubal drama. Tarek Skubal is in a contract here. Do people not get that? The guy has hundreds of millions of dollars on the line, and they want him to risk that playing in the World Baseball Classic? I wish he could just sign an extension right now, despite the lockout that's probably looming. And then the fact that he wants more, it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. I wish he could go out there and throw against the winner of Venezuela, Italy. But I just don't get how people were expecting a guy in a contract year like Tarek Skubal and a team that's got really high aspirations to just knock that all aside for the World Baseball Classic. And I love the World Baseball Classic. I love the WBC. But they've got other options on Team USA. The Detroit Tigers have no other options. Where else do you want them to go if something happens? I can't knock Tarek Skubal. I won't knock Tarek Skubal. Maybe that's the bigger problem. But I can't. And I think he's making a really good business decision. I think he's made good business decisions all the way, even though that kind of sucks with the current contract situation. But we saw him win arbitration. We all know it's coming. Let's make that one push for the Tigers. Let's make that one push. Now, speaking of the World Baseball Classic, I hope Will Vest gets to go in that championship on Tuesday. That would be electric to watch. I thought maybe we'd get to see him against Dominican. I don't know how I would have handled that stress, but it would have been fun. But I mean, when you got Mason Miller out there dealing the way he was, I wouldn't go to Will Vest either. But I do hope Vest gets an opportunity in a couple days against the winner of Venezuela, Italy. I think he can come out for a 7th or 8th inning. So that'd be great to see. I'd love to see that. And then Emmanuel De Jesus, that cutter he's got working, this is something to look at for a Tigers team that, as I mentioned, has some beat-up arms. It'll be really nice to have someone step up unexpectedly. So having that would be great for Detroit. No puck like that.
Huh?
I don't really know puck like that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Better sign now.
Time for Red Wings talk with a non-puck guy. And I was told by the play-by-play broadcaster, Ken Daniels, who is electric, that point against Dallas was a big one. We were down 2-0. Went and got that point. We'll take it. Gut-wrenching overtime loss, but Ken told me to be positive. I'll be positive. I'll trust Ken. And I'm looking at the standings. The standings don't look awful. We got to hold on with Larkin and Cop-Out. It's going to be tough. I think we can still make it. I'm worried about Columbus, but that's when you got to turn your attention to a team like New York or Pittsburgh and trying to catch them. Trying to catch those teams that in your division are a couple points ahead maybe, instead of focusing on the red-hot team, might also be a better mindset shift. We'll see how that goes. Few L's in a row is not good. I don't like looking at a goal differential of -6. I'm not a puck guy. I don't know puck at all. What I do know is Dylan Larkin's electric, and we need him back. And that postseason hockey is all you need. If you get hot there, you get hot. This isn't a sport like football where you got to have the best team. Basketball where you got to have the best team. You can get hot. The Red Wings got some guys who know how to get hot. They've done it at some big spots. I think they can get hot, but again, non-puck guy here. Just trying my best here with the Red Wings. First, I need to address the overall situation with the Lions because you got to talk about that championship window. I think the championship window is open, but I think last year it was shuttering. And I think it's almost like we're in a different Super Bowl window now where the moves need to be slightly different. Everybody wants to go trade for Max Crosby. I don't think that's the move at this stage. If you think we are an opposite edge rusher away from winning the Super Bowl, I don't think you understand where this Lions roster is at after missing the playoffs. I think 2 years ago, when they went 15-2, lost to Washington while banged up, if you have a Max Crosby then, that might make up for those losses. The year before, you blow a lead to the Niners, you're one play away the entire time. You're one player away like a Max Crosby. But now the Lions aren't in that spot. I don't think you can mortgage your future. That's the type of desperation move that a lot of GMs would make and put themselves in a tough spot for the kind of secondary Super Bowl window that's already a tough one to kind of thread the needle on. I do like what we're doing here in the offseason free agency-wise. I think allowing Anzalone to walk is the right move, just with where the market was at for him and with Jack Campbell there. Jack Campbell's already wearing that green dot. Jack Campbell's a better linebacker at this stage in their careers than Alex Anzalone. And I love Anzalone and what he did for us, the same way I love what Taylor Decker has done for us in his 10-year career. But another guy where we're at the point where we can't hold on to everybody for the money they want and expect to build a Super Bowl roster. I think the same goes for saying that a Max Crosby trade wouldn't turn us into a Super Bowl contender. I also think that the split backfield was evolving because Jahmyr Gibbs is special. And having David Montgomery was not the same value that it once was when you were integrating Gibbs into the league. Now, you don't need that Montgomery. We already saw last year Montgomery was getting upset with the amount of touches he had. Fine, ship him off. And to get the return we got, a potential starting offensive lineman, a 4th and a 7th. Listen, Brad hasn't hit the way he did in his first 2 drafts over the past couple. But more opportunities, you miss every shot you don't take. More shots means more potential for hits. And what the Lions need right now are cheap contracts contributing to the roster. Because they're at the point where those best players are demanding money. They're getting the money. And we're doing a great job with those contracts too. But we're not in a position where we can just re-sign everybody and be kumbaya with the old roster and expect things to get better. I like our pickups. I don't think any of them are groundbreaking. Isaiah Pacheco can just kind of take the load off of Gibbs when it's a short yardage situation, and that's more just for the health of Gibbs, I think. Pacheco is behind a really bad offensive line, and I think this is something he saw as an opportunity to prove himself behind a good offensive line and potentially up his market value in a year, even though he's at that stage in a running back's career where you're not going to see a huge contract, especially with a guy who can't pull off an explosive play. He at the very least can prove himself to be a formidable RB2 and possibly set himself up for a multi-million-dollar contract in a year rather than the 1.8 that we gave him, which is an absolute steal, and why I point out that I think he just thought this was a really good fit for him. So I'll take the Pacheco signing, even though he's not my favorite running back. Now, the big signing that really stole the show was Cade Mays. Mays does everything on the offensive line. With Skipper gone, with Glasgow now being gone, we need somebody that can be a little versatile on the offensive line, and Cade Mays is that guy. Not only is he versatile, but he's a good blocker. He's going to be great. We got him on a bargain deal. I don't know much about O-line. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that. I could analyze the tape and tell you that this guy is going to do this or that. I can look at a PFF grade. I can look at someone's opinion. I can look at old opinions, and I can form mine based on that. And I think the Cade Mays signing is a really low-risk, high-reward situation. And I think it's the Lions' best move of free agency, and it's going to help them out big time moving on. We'll see how the rest of things shake out. The draft is big. We've got a good pick for the first time in a couple years. I wonder if we can get a difference maker, and then you don't have to make that trade right now. Who knows if we get to the deadline and this whole Max Crosby situation has gotten even weirder and he's even cheaper. Then you're not mortgaging a future, and then you're adding a guy that might help you get hot on a playoff run. But you don't need to make that move right now. We're just not in that position. Plain and simple, not in the position where Max Crosby makes us a Super Bowl champ. So we got to look at that. We got to make some draft picks, and we got to go into the season. Because the secondary is the problem. And if the secondary doesn't get addressed, we're going to be in for some issues. Between the injuries, the off-the-field issues, and the talent alone, it's just not going to work. Because Amik Robertson leaving, that's going to hurt us. That's going to hurt us. That's our biggest loss right there is Amik Robertson. But at the same time, I think it was the right time to move on. And hopefully we can get something out of the McCreary Isian signings. It's not super flashy, but again, it's just looking for those steals. I feel like we got one with Rock Yassin last year, and he's still around. So we'll see what we can make happen. Right now, I'm not feeling crazily optimistic about the Lions like I was going into the last couple seasons, but I do feel like they're in a solid spot with the current rebuild, restructuring golf. It's a decent look for Brad Holmes right now. When it comes to the Pistons, first and foremost, Cade Cunningham is the most valuable player in the entire league. Whether he's the MVP or not is a different conversation. I don't think you should even consider the true acronym of MVP anymore. Not just for the NBA, but most leagues. Most leagues are very flawed. If you take Cade Cunningham off of the Pistons, they're right back to winning less than 20 games. There's just no world where that's different. Look at Jokic, Luka, and Shea. I think the next most valuable might be Luka, but I think it's Cade Cunningham. Because without Cade, this team is rough. There is no offense. And that takes me to the problem with the Pistons and the potential playoff run that they want to go on. You wouldn't have found someone higher on the Pistons than me in the first half of the season. But with what I've seen lately, hard-nosed defense only gets you so far. Hard-nosed defense can get you far in the NBA because of the way effort works in the regular season and the importance of each and every game out of the 82. It's gotten them to a really good spot, but it's not looking good as of late. The secondary creation and the lack of shooters has become ever apparent, and they needed to address that at the deadline. But it's another situation where I don't think you want to address that and ruin your timeline. It's tough because most Detroit sports teams are in this spot where they don't want to mortgage their future. They got a lot of young guys that they really believe in. But they're also doing well where they're at. I don't think there was a deadline move for the Pistons to make. I'm glad they did what they did. But I don't think this team can even win the East at this point. I would take the Celtics, the Knicks, and the Cavs over us in a 7-game series. Even the Knicks, who we've had their number, but you've seen the song and dance before. You get to the postseason, and it's a different sport. While I love my Pistons, I love Cade Cunningham, and I do truly believe in him and the fact that he's an all-NBA first-team player, I hope this team can get to the conference finals. I hope they can as a fan. But it might just be another second-round bounce, or a second-round bounce. Which is, it's noted that for teams to become a contender, you got to get to that second round before you can do so. But with Boston being that good and getting Tatum back, with the Knicks as cold as they've been all season and being 5 games back of us and probably just going to turn it up in the playoffs, I certainly don't like how we've looked against the Cavs. I just don't. I wouldn't even predict us to make the Eastern Conference Finals right now. I just can't with the way the team looks. I'm going to cheer for them harder than anybody. And I loved what they did in the first half of the season, but I feel like even the hard-nosed defense is getting tired because it can only take you so far in the NBA. And at the end of the day, you need other creation. You can't rely on Cade Cunningham for 28 games in a row. And if you think it's going to be less than that, I don't think you've watched the Pistons because they will play a 7-game series with anyone. I said I was going to get back to Kevin McGonigle, and here we are. So McGonigle is a special player. You can see it with the type of prospect he is and the grades he's received. You saw it off of Luis Severino, who just dealt for a few innings against the American team in the WBC. McGonigle has more than proven himself this spring. Survived rounds of spring training cuts. It's the number 1 hole on the Tigers, that shortstop position. How can you say no to McGonigle at this point? I think the number 1 reason you say yes to McGonigle at this point is so that he can go win the American League Rookie of the Year. And he will. The odds have dropped from plus 900 when I originally looked at this to plus 500. He's 5-1. The only guy ahead of him is the pitcher Trey Savage. But what McGonigle can bring to the table to a team that should be playing winning baseball, McGonigle will win Rookie of the Year. if you've seen that swing, if you've seen him play short, you know what I'm talking about. He's got the tools to do it. He just needs to be given the opportunity. I love Kevin McGonigle this season. And even more incentive for the Tigers to throw him in there and see what he can bring to the table. Playing all year is going to help your case for Rookie of the Year. And it would certainly help the Tigers' case to not worry about contract control and how long they're going to have him for. If you get him up and he wins that award, you get a back-end first-round pick. What's better than that? You're worried about losing a guy a year early? How about you go draft another hit prospect because they've been doing really well as of late? Kevin McGonigle is the American League Rookie of the Year in 2026, without a doubt. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being the best position player on the Detroit Tigers. It's putting a lot of high expectations on a guy who's never seen a major league fastball. He's never been in a major league game and seen a pitch. But I just don't see a better option at shortstop for a team that's trying to win their division. And it's just a disservice to not only him, but the other 40 guys you put on the roster, the other 15 to 20 that are going to join the roster at some point. It's a disservice to the fans to not include him on the team because you're trying to control him for an extra year or whatever they want to do with the service time. Going into a lockout, go use the guy. Go use him. Go win something. He'll win something. That's for sure. That'll do it for Motown Monday. First Motown Monday. YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Substack, all of it. MotownGriff. Find it all there. Let me know what you think. I'm just trying to talk Detroit ball